Warning: the following video contains foul language and is not suitable for children. Viewer discretion is advised. Remember that Silent Hill movie that came out back in 2006? The trailers made it look promising. It had decent visuals and callbacks to the original game that should have pleased anyone, but fans of Silent Hill saw through the movie and knew the creative team behind it were just pissing all over the source material so they could do whatever they wanted. That's how Masters of the Universe Revelation Part 2 felt for me. I wanted to like Part 2. I really did. The trailer looked promising, but then again, so did the trailer for Part 1, and if you've seen my previous video, you know how little I enjoyed that mess. On my initial viewing, I wasn't angry with Part 2, but it still bugged me in a lot of ways that kept me from liking it. It was one of those pieces of media that the more I thought about the narrative presented, the more I began to ask questions, and it only got worse the more I thought about it. Revelation Part 2 picks up directly from the cliffhanger of Part 1. Adam is back from the dead, but is mortally wounded. Skeletor has seized Castle Grayskull and the Sword of Power, calling the power to himself, to become the most powerful being in the universe. The Sorceress is able to get Teela, Adam, Cringer, and Andra to safety before Skeletor murders her. Now our heroes have to find a way to stop a super powerful Skeletor. The positive aspects of Part 1 remain positive here. Good sound design paired with a great musical score that has some memorable themes for some of the big battles. The voice cast still gives solid performances. Powerhouse Studios continues to deliver with great animation, fantastic environments, and solid character designs, with a few exceptions I'll mention later. The fight scenes in particular are really great, along with some set-piece battles in the later episodes. The main cast of characters are more likable this time around now that Adam is back amongst the living, and Teela isn't a total bitch, but I still have gripes about her actions in this half of the series. That's where the positives end for me. Despite all of the praise I can give to the voice cast, animation, and art style, the choices made with the writing still reek of bad decisions and poor execution. It's been months since Part 2 was released, so I don't care about spoiling the story, as I can't give my thoughts about what got on my nerves without giving away a number of things, so if you still want to watch this for yourself without being spoiled, here's your only warning. The story seemed like it had one or two good ideas, but for every step the script takes forward, the script takes a number of steps backwards until it falls on its ass. Skeletor, now being the most powerful man in the universe, decides to make Evil-Lyn the new sorceress. I'll admit, I do like the bat motif they had for her sorceress design, but things are only going downhill from here. Later on, we get to see what would happen if Adam called the power to himself without the sword. For some reason, without the sword, instead of becoming He-Man, Adam just turns into what I can only describe as Surfer Bro meets the Incredible Hulk. Also, if Adam can still call the power, wouldn't that mean Skeletor shouldn't have it? This is one of the many questions that I couldn't help but ask as I continued to watch. We get more bodies to add to the pile of casualties because this is how the story wants you to take it seriously. Did you like Clamp Champ and Fisto growing up as a kid? Now they're friggin' dead. After a decent fight scene, Teela realizes she can totally use magic and decides to teleport our heroes out of harm's way. Meanwhile, Skeletor gets super pissed that Adam was able to call the power to himself, despite the fact that Evil-Lyn is now the sorceress. Here is one of the things I did like about the story. Skeletor has won. He controls Castle Grayskull. He has the power of the universe at his command. He can do anything he wants. Despite all of this, however, he still feels like he just has to beat Adam, as if he's obsessed with claiming victory over He-Man over everything else. It's an interesting idea that could be explored well with good writing, but Megamind this is not. Skeletor then decides to show Evil-Lyn what the entire universe looks like, and this breaks her mentally to the point where she decides she's just going to wreak as much havoc as she possibly can. I still don't get the idea behind her motivation, but before we go any further, we have to see the most uncomfortable scene in this whole production as Evil-Lyn seduces Skeletor. All of this so she can get him to power down and take the sword from him. Skeletor, bro, I know sex is great and all, but have you ever had the power of the universe? While I don't know everything there is to know about He-Man lore, I'm pretty sure that the sorceress can control who gets to use the power and who doesn't, right? The series reminds the audience a number of times that the power flows through the sorceress.
I made you the sorceress of Grayskull. The power flows only through you.
You are the sorceress now. His power flows only through you.
The real sorceress held so much power she gave it away. It was her gift to bestow and withdraw at will. Any might manifested by the champion is only granted to him by the sorceress.
Evil Lyn should have had no problem stripping Skeletor of the power at the snap of a finger. We didn't need to see this. Now having the sword, Evil Lyn decides to call the power to herself and become what I can only describe as she-bitch. With Evil Lyn now juiced up, Skeletor is left with no choice but to turn to Prince Adam for help to stop Evil Lyn as she plans to destroy all life in the universe because seeing how vast the universe is messed her up. The scene with Adam and Skeletor having a conversation was something else I really liked, but I feel as if there could have been more to this. A great hero and his greatest nemesis are now forced to talk about their differences, but that's not what we get. Meanwhile, Teela figures out that the sorceress was her mother, and that she now has to step in as the new sorceress if the good guys are going to stop Bitch Lyn from destroying the universe. Something else I have to mention before I go too much farther is a flashback sequence we see at the start of part 2, which shows Teela's mother becoming the sorceress. We see her partake in this ritual which grants her the power but now binds her to Castle Grayskull, meaning she must sacrifice her relationship she has with her newborn daughter and her lover Duncan. Keep this in mind. Fast forward to the climax where Skeletor and Adam have to face down juiced up Lyn, who decides to raise an undead army to stop our heroes. Incidentally, this also brings back Orko, who helps get the Sword of Power back to Adam. Not only does Adam become He-Man again, but he also grants power to Skeletor so he can help. The main reason I was scratching my head at this scene is because I was wondering, why doesn't He-Man or Skeletor with the power they have just take the power back from Evil Lyn? Can't they just sap her power from her? Again, I'm no expert on He-Man lore, but I feel like they really played fast and loose with how the power works in this show. It's like friggin' Oprah. You get the power, you get the power, you get the power! While He-Man and Skeletor fight off Evil Lyn's undead army, we see that Teela has found her way to the basement of Castle Grayskull and must partake in the same ritual her mother did to become the new sorceress. But, much like how her mother had to sacrifice being with her family, Teela must now bind herself to the castle to become the new sorceress, sacrificing any life she had before and the relationship she cares about. Having to make a sacrifice for the greater good, not just for the sake of the world they all live in, but all life within the universe itself. That's some heavy stuff. Almost like this show wanted to raise and ask serious questions. But the show's answer turns out to be, fuck all that, I do what I want! Teela basically just gives herself the power of the sorceress, and she's not bound to the castle, basically rewriting whatever rules would have been in place for her mom. Makes me wonder, why couldn't her mom do that? She has to sacrifice the people she cares about, but Teela does it? Cause she's that friggin' special, I guess. This is one of my biggest problems with the whole story. Sacrifice? The greater good? Nah. As I mentioned earlier, I'm no expert on the lore here, but even I think this is some BS that Teela is able to pull here. Her mom has to make sacrifices, but Teela could just rewrite the rules of the friggin' universe because she's just awesome, I guess. This is why I feel like the writers are just pissing all over the source material, not only for this, but for everything leading up to this. At one point, Skeletor decides to turn on He-Man as he's still obsessed with trying to beat him, and even goes so far as to say, this is what everything has been about. Skeletor versus He-Man. He-Man's response?
It's not about us!
What?
You know, for a series that claimed to be such a love letter to fans, they certainly go out of their way to say, hey, you know how much you love the conflict between these two characters? Well, fuck you, because that's not important. This isn't a tribute to fans. This is a slap in the face for fans who cared about this property and what it meant to them. We get a happy ending and a stinger for Hordak, but I couldn't give a banana rat's ass for what they do after this. There are many people who would defend this half of the series even if they didn't like part 1. I'm not one of them. Yes, there are cool scenes and moments in this half, but the hours of garbage I had to sit through just for 3 minutes of catharsis was not worth it. Despite all of the things that are done right in this miniseries production, the writing and the execution of a story that could give fuck all for the source content tanks it for me. I give Masters of the Universe Revelation Part 2 a 2 out of 5.